Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss something that I think might be unique. A Brexit voting fisherman who was interviewed saying how bad Brexit had been for fishing and exactly why that was. And would you believe that this interview was conducted by GB News on the 5th anniversary of Brexit when they were trying to support Brexit? Couldn't believe it. GB News tried to do a pro-Brexit story, ended up being anti-Brexit. Embarrassing. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you stay notified. So before we get on to the fisherman who told GB News how bad Brexit was, despite their trying to get a different answer out of him, let's just look at how ridiculous linking fishing to Brexit benefits always was. See, first of all, our fishing industry is tiny. How tiny? Well, Games Workshop, a hobby company that I have been a customer for many years, based in Nottingham and worth more than our entire fishing industry. They make plastic models. They only employ about 3,000 people. They're worth more than our entire fishing industry. That is how small our fishing industry is. The idea that you would sacrifice trading for every goods producing sector in our economy for the benefit of the fishing industry was always insane. However, it wasn't even the case that the fishing industry benefited. Both Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson would regularly use fishermen for their photo opportunities and speeches before we left the single market, not so much afterwards. In fact, since leaving the single market, both Johnson and Farage have decided, we don't really want to talk about fishing anymore. So why couldn't Brexit benefit fishermen, and how should they have known before we left? Well, first of all, let's look at fishing crews. Before we left the EU, only half of all the crews of British fishing vessels, the actual fishermen, were British. In other words, for every British fisherman, we needed a migrant fisherman just to take advantage of the EU quotas we had. And Farage and Johnson were arguing we should have more quotas. If we had more quotas, you catch more fish, you make more money. But we didn't even have enough fishermen to catch the quotas we already had. So it would have been impossible to take advantage of more quotas without hiring even more migrant fishermen. But it doesn't end there. Because if we had expanded quotas in British waters for British vessels, we'd have lost them around other waters. And the fish we mostly like to eat in Britain doesn't come from British waters. It's mostly Norwegian or Icelandic. So what happens to the extra fish we'd be catching in British waters? Well, the market for them is continental Europe. But if we come up with a deal that disadvantaged EU fishermen, the EU would just close off access to their market, won't be able to sell it. So we might be able to catch more fish in British waters, but British fishermen in other waters would lose their access, and the extra British catch would just rot on the docks because we don't really like it in this country, not much of it. And they wouldn't be able to sell it in Europe because the market would just be literally closed off to them. They could try flash freezing it and selling it to other markets around the world, and some do get sold there. But again, limited scope for non-fresh fish. And of course, the extra expense in transporting it there. And even without any antagonism with the EU, British fishermen naturally lose out anyway. See, Boris Johnson eventually agreed a deal which did mean we lost access to other waters. That cost jobs. People lost their jobs because of that. But yes, we gained a little extra access around British waters, only a little. How little? Well, in 2019, the last year before we left, the EU, the UK fishing industry was worth £987 million and landed 622,000 tonnes of sea fish. In 2023, the latest data we have shows that it was worth £1.1 billion and landed 719,000 tonnes of sea fish. So British fishing vessels are certainly landing more fish in tonnage terms, absolutely, but the value hasn't gone up in proportion. In fact, let's look at those figures. So since 2023, we've landed 15.6% more fish by mass, but the value of the fishing industry has gone up by just 11.4%. So the value per tonne of fish has gone down in real terms. Except it's even worse than that. The 2019 figures are 2019 prices. So what does it look like when we took inflation into account and do real figures, real terms? Well, then the value of the fishing industry didn't actually increase by 11.4% at all. It actually went down by 9.1%. So the value per tonne of fish we're now getting in real terms, with inflation taken into account, is catastrophically lower. So why is this? What is the value of fish per tonne? Why is it so much lower since Brexit? Well, this is where we refer to our friend, the Brexit voting fisherman. Red tape, he said. It's 100 times what it used to be. So let's look at how this affects fishermen like Mr. Dixon and why it hurts them even more than other exporters. So first of all, there is a cost to making sure you've got all the right documentation. For a small business owner, and if you get any mistakes, by the way, there's going to be massive delays. If you're trying to sell fish, they're going to go off. So you're a small business owner. You may not have the skills to do that. So you may need to hire a customs agent to do it for you, in much the same way you will pay an accountant to sort your taxes out. But let's say you do have the skills, or you learn the skills, you can do it yourself. You still have to spend the time doing it, and it's quite a lot of time. And that time has a value. You have to take it from some other aspect of your life, maybe the time spent fishing. Then there are the checks. This is where the Brexit is worse for fishermen than most other businesses. So let's say a manufacturing business gets an order from an EU customer. So it will take time to produce that order anyway. So they sort out the documentation in parallel with producing the order. The main delays are with the transport, being held up at a lorry park in Kent perhaps, and then again when they get having things checked. But the fisherman is selling fresh fish. They've literally just caught it. They need it in the places of like Paris within hours. They have to sort out the paperwork in that time. Then they have to have it checked. All of this takes time. While it's being done, the fish is losing its freshness. That means that a lot of the fish caught in British waters, but because it's being sold in the EU, is not as fresh as it used to be, because it now takes longer to get it cleared across the trade borders. That makes the fish less valuable. It's still fit for consumption, as long as you don't take literally days to sell it, as long as you don't make a mistake in your paperwork, but it will command a lower price now. This is part of the reason why British fishing vessels are landing 15.6% more fish in 2023, but it was worth 9.1% less in monetary value. Also worth pointing out that 2023 might have been a particularly good year because although 719,000 tonnes was landed, it was only 640,000 tonnes in 2022 under exactly the same post-Brexit quota system. So some years are better than others. We don't know whether 2022 was a bad year or 2023 was a good year. And we can't possibly know where the equilibrium point is until we have like years worth of post-Brexit data. But what we do know is that British fishermen are now catching more fish, but taking in less money for it. Literally working harder for less money. Now, call that a Brexit win? Nigel Farage does. Not so much the fishermen being interviewed by GB News. Their fish is worth less. It's costing them more to send it to market. And it's worth watching the whole clip. I'll link it in a nice friendly Blue Sky form. But it's hilarious to see the GB News interviewer trying to get this poor guy to say that Brexit gave him benefits, only to be told, no, sorry, it's shite. I think they're regretting doing it live. For example, to the problem of the costs. They said you can't just sell the fish for more. GB News interviewers go, you just sell it for more then. You cover your costs, sell it for more. And it's going, no, there's like competition in the market. We won't sell it then. They'll just buy some different fish. Other media outlets manage to avoid interviewing these people, or if they do by accident, they edit it out. The BBC have done that. Hilarious to see GB News do it, only to expose the fact that this Brexit voting fisherman voted leave to get less red tape, only to report that red tape increased by 100 times. Oh, and that's not hyperbole, by the way. Brexit red tape is actually 100 times what EU red tape was. I know it sounds like it's just one of those numbers you throw out. So when something's a lot more, you just, it's like 100 times more, or 1,000 times more, or a zillion times more, right? No, but it is actually right. The logistics industry have calculated the amount of extra bureaucracy, and it is almost exactly 100 times what it used to be. Which is why our trade borders are so weak now. We can't afford to increase the check-in facilities and staff by 100 times, so we just let smugglers have an easy ride of it. So yes, we were led to believe Brexit was all about making fishermen richer, even though the entire sector is tiny, and we ended up making them poorer. In fact, we screwed fishermen over worse than anyone. Really, the entire fishing industry should be furious with both Farage and Johnson, not because they were wrong. They weren't wrong. They lied. They knew what the reality would be. It was dodgy investors they were looking out for, not fishermen. I mean, the very idea that Farage ever gave a shit about fishermen was laughable. He was supposed to be their representative in the EU. He was on the Fisheries Committee. But apart from one time, presumably to make sure he signed up for it. He never attended a single meeting. Fisherman should reflect on that, what Brexit has done, and the fact they never see Farage bothering with them anymore. Because he will again. Because we're going to be working on a new fishing agreement, and we're probably going to give the EU fishermen better access again in order to be able to get lower trade barriers. Now, as soon as we do, Farage is going to suddenly pop up again and start talking about fishing. Fishermen would do well to have nothing to do with him if they want to drop the red tape back down, because there's only one group that's trying to reduce that red tape right now, and it's the Labour government. So let's see how fishermen respond then. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.